We have had severely bad news in the housing market over the last week and especially yesterday. But according to some Zillow recent articles, it's not all that bad. Now, this is some fun, positive optimism that we may need right now. So let's look at what we're talking about. Now, I am Stephen Clark. I have flipped over 100 houses and sold over 200 houses. So I'm going to give you my unique perspective on all this. Now, Zillow just released some rental housing numbers, which gives me a lot of optimism. And I think it should you too. Now, I know a lot of people hate Zillow, and you can shove it down in the comments whether you like them or not. They have a lot of information. I am smart. I am smart. Now, we've been getting bombarded with really bad and terrible housing news, as you know. If you're a seller, it's bad news. If you're a buyer, it's bad news. The interest rate hike from yesterday was bad news for buyers and also sellers, but it hits buyers first in the immediate impact, and then it will trickle down to sellers. And we're in this really kind of gray area right now, this really bad time, because you don't have sellers dropping their prices to the levels that buyers want to pay right now. So you have high sellers and low buyers based off the Federal Reserve interest rates, which leaves a big gap between kind of supply and demand, which makes this housing market contract. That's why we're seeing all these price drops. That's why we're seeing all these buyer demands, home builds pulling back. But the good news here is the rental prices. And that's honestly probably some of the best news you could have, because when you do have this uncertainty in the real estate market, what are people going to do? Instead of buying and selling, they're going to rent. And rent, according to these Zillow prices, peaked 6 months ago. So you can see right here, they have the Zillow Observed Rent Indexed, smoothed, and then the apartment list same unit rents. All these are showing similar trends of having the massive peak back in December of 2021 with kind of a slow falling over the last 6 months, with it culminating now to be some of the lowest levels of rent prices, which is really crazy. I had a multi-million-dollar client one time that I learned a lot from, because he was one of my first ones, and he said, Stephen, when rents goes up, they very rarely go down. And so it's surprising for me to see this, and really great to see this. According to Jeff Tucker, senior economist at Zillow, it shows a real substantial rent inflation taking hold in the last couple of years, but it also shows on an annual basis that has peaked in February, according to our index. Now, you would think, okay, that's great, and the Federal Reserve Board is going to look at that, and they're going to say rent's going down, so we have a little bit of optimism. Maybe we won't add to the interest rates as much. Maybe we'll chill out. No. We are not going to get that lucky, because this is not data that goes into the CPI data. Now, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is what real estate and the Federal Reserve Board looks at when it's determining interest rates and if they're going to pull them up or push them down. So this is not factored into the CPI, which is kind of unfortunate. They're trying to capture the experience of all renters out there, Tucker said, but the majority of people didn't move last year and aren't necessarily signing a new lease at prevailing rates on a listing platform. So they're saying that they don't have all the data to accurately represent what's going on here. And since CPI doesn't calculate this data, we're just not going to have this data. So they're showing what is the holes in the market. The holes in the market is that not a lot of people rented last year or sold. So we don't have a lot of information. And some of the dips could be just because people were actually buying and selling, right? You had those traditionally really low interest rates and people were buying all over the place. So as we know, the consumer index, the CPI, rose at 8.3%. And they said that this is Gordon, the same guy we were just hearing from. We are still in the first portion of this cycle. That's the point where we're trying to hammer home with inflation. It's going to take longer for these lags in monetary policy to kick in, even if people are expecting it to change fast. Very true. I expect it to change fast, but we know that even this interest rate hike that we just saw yesterday is probably not going to have the fullest effects until 3 months down the line, maybe even 6 months down the line. There's actually been a lot of statistics around the Fed overshooting its interest rates because the Fed doesn't give it enough time to really grapple into the market. I fear that's happening right now. You might feel the same way. Let me know in the comments if you fear that the Fed is overshooting its interest rates hike without giving it enough time to maturate and mature. Another really scary thing in this whole scenario is the well-established metrics between the Fed's raising rates and recessions happening. So we can see in this graph right here that there is a long history ever since 1967. We have seen when federal interest rates go high, when the interest rates go high, a recession is corresponding. It happened in the 70s, happened in the mid 70s, happened in the 80s, early 80s, and late 70s, and it happened in the 90s and the dot-com bust, the housing bust in 2007. Potentially the everything bubble burst is what they're calling this might be in 2022. So we will just see. Now, what does this mean for us? What does this mean for if we are buying or selling a home? I have this question on TikTok a lot. TikTok is blowing up over there. We have a couple 100,000 on the Zillow housing crash video right here. Thousands of comments. Those have been really cool to respond to. And some of the main comments I'm getting there is about whether to buy or sell right now. And it all depends so much on where you are and where you're at with your market. What I am doing personally though, and take this for what it is, this is not financial advice. Oh, also, if you have a question, I've been answering all those thousands of comments on TikTok, and they're super fun because I love real estate. I forgot how much I love talking about real estate and to get around other geeky real estate people like yourself. But they have some advanced questions. I would love to answer them. So I'm just like charging $45 for like an actual detailed answer. Any questions, you can go to the link tree and ask me that. So it just gives me an excuse to spend more time on it so I don't have to think about my time value as much. What I'm doing personally is I am waiting. Now, there's a huge caveat with waiting because my home buying is going to be investing. If you're buying your primary residence, now might still be the time because you're going to get an interest rate increase again in probably the next quarter when the Federal Reserve Board meets again, and it might not even stop until next year. So might be the cheapest time to buy as of right now. Yesterday might be the cheapest time to buy. If you're an investor and a flipping investor, which I am waiting. I'm not going to take on any more flips. I've already seen the flips that I do have on the market. We have 5 projects going right now. Already seen the showings decline massively. Already seen the offers decline massively to the point that I am not touching this with a 10-foot pole. Definitely don't gonna flip anything that you can't refinance out of and get the rents. You know, you don't want to be coming out of pocket every month. If you are looking for a primary, for me, might still be the time to look. If you are, as an investor, for me, a flip investor, staying on the sidelines. If you're buy and hold investor, I would stay on the sidelines too until about probably 3 to 6 months from now and then reassess. That's just me. Like and subscribe to this channel. I'm having so much fun talking about this stuff. Write me any kind of questions you have. Thanks for watching.